Hello and welcome to this next Flip Preaching video. My name's Andy. In these videos we have a look at the Gospel passage for the Sunday to come about a week beforehand so that we can try and chew it over and live with it a bit before we get to the Sunday service. So the passage today is Matthew 25, 1 to 13, and it's a parable which only occurs in Matthew, and it's I find it quite a tricky one actually. It's a kind of simple story, but to work out what it means, I think it's quite hard. So it's the parable of the 10 virgins with their lamps full of oil waiting for the bridegroom. So the story goes, there are 10 virgins, 10 young ladies, and they've got oil-powered lamps. We don't know whether they're the sort of lamps that burn the oil with a wick, like a sort of hurricane lamp, or it's more like a stick with a cloth wrapped around it that you dip into oil. Either way, they needed oil to power these lamps, and their job was to wait up for the bridegroom to come after his wedding so that they could show him into the wedding banquet. And the 5 of them, it says, were wise, and they had spare oil. 5 of them had what they thought was just enough. And they wait and they wait and they wait, and the bridegroom's delayed, it says, which is an important point, and then they fall asleep. But then they're woken up when the bridegroom does come, and the 5 who just had enough, turns out it wasn't enough. So they don't have enough oil. So they have to scoot off into town to buy some more oil. Meanwhile, the bridegroom comes, so just 5 of them are there to do the job, and they go into the party with him and the doors are shut. And he says, "I never knew you," for the ones who turn up a little bit later. So, what is it all about? The bridegroom, we're pretty clear, represents Jesus. There's a sense that Jesus has left, but one day Jesus will come back. So this is a story about the second coming, about the, what will happen when God comes back to make the world good again. We don't really know definitively what the oil is meant to represent. It's a bit of a mystery. Martin Luther thought that it meant faith. So it was the amount of faith that you had that sustained you when you waited. Other people think that based on other similar passages in Matthew, say Matthew 7, it talks about good works. It's about the things that we do. They're like the oil in our lamp that we're told to get lots of, to have lots of, to be people who are generous and kind and blessing the world. That's what it means to have lots of oil ready. Maybe it means love. The amount of love that we have is a kind of measure of how much, our love reserves are a measure of what the oil's meant to mean. Whatever it means, the implication is that some people kind of run on empty, and others have got lots of it. I wonder what you think it represents. And they have to wait because the bridegroom is delayed. The early church that we see written about in the early bits of Acts, where they shared all their belongings and no one was in need and they had everything in common. They were kind of expecting Jesus to come back in perhaps a few weeks, a few months maybe. They weren't expecting it to be a long wait, but it turned out to be a long wait. And now 2,000 years on, we're kind of still waiting. So the delay is still with us. So the question is, what do we need to have lots of to sustain us while God isn't here? Now, I don't know whether you think that God is here or isn't here, but there's a sense in scriptures that one day God will come in a more tangible, in a more obvious way, and we're still waiting. We're still waiting. The bit at the end troubles me, if I'm being frank. The bit at the end where the 5 who had plenty of oil get into the party and then the doors are shut, and when the 5 who were, tasked with this job and made one mistake, they turn up a little bit late. I mean, the guy was late. They kind of feel a bit sorry for the 5 who didn't have enough oil. But they're met with the most harsh kind of judgment. The doors shut. And the bridegroom says, no, I don't know you. I don't even know who you are. Now, that's not true, because they're people he kind of picked for the job. He's somehow denouncing them, disowning them. And to me, that doesn't sound like God. I don't know what's going on here. If the bridegroom represents Jesus, this is kind of odd. The rest of the Gospels portray Jesus as someone who is always forgiving and giving people second chances, and there's story after story about people who are given a second chance. God is full of grace and love, and he loves everybody and knows everybody. Of course he knew who these five were. I don't know how to read this. Possibly helpfully, towards the end of Matthew's Gospel, in the scene where Jesus has been arrested and Peter is denying knowing him, Peter uses the same words, I don't know him. And of course, Peter is remorseful. He is the cockerel crying, and he's remorseful, and he's forgiven, and he's brought back into the heart of things, and the church is started based on his leadership. So Peter's restored and redeemed and brought back in, even though he kind of messed up. So I would hope that God is better than the story portrays. Quite often the parables get some way to describe what God's like, but fall short because God is better. And I would hope that would be the case here. But let's be people who are prepared. Let's try to strive to be the ones with enough spare oil, whatever that means, so that we don't have to wait. When we're waiting and waiting for God to come back and to set the world straight, that we'll have enough reserves to keep us going. So a few questions for you. I'd love to hear what you think about this. So firstly, what do you think the oil represents? Is it faith? Is it love? Is it good works, or something else? Secondly, how do you read that I don't know you, that harsh bit at the end? And thirdly, how do we develop patience while we wait? We kind of hope that God will come and set this world straight, but it hasn't happened yet. While we're waiting, what can we do to encourage each other so that we can wait well? Okay, well, thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.